Hey, J-Bone Nation! Shaming of Jay. He's not a dopey dumb bitch. He gets laid. The court jester. The court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case.
What's up, everybody? Welcome
Welcome to the docket and J-Bo Nation. We're doing a dual stream. I'm excited about this one, bro, because you haven't dipped your toes into the craziness that is the case that never sleeps, which is Delphi. So I'm excited to intro to all my folks that love Delphi. This is my brother from another mother, my partner in crime, Jay. Say what's up, man.
What's up, guys? Actually, I think, Bob, with the one other time I did, was that not a motion for the Franks hearing when we went through all the
I stand corrected. I stand corrected.
So
well, welcome back, my friend. It's been a hot minute.
Thanks for having me.
So
I got a sound. They're low on here, but this is what I think of every time there's a new. I got a sound bite. I'll see if you can hear it, guys. This is what I think of every time Bob gets sucked back into this.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
I know it's low, but that's every time, Bob. It's like you end a stream, and by the time before you're even in like your bed, because you're like at night going on late, there's a new freaking thing, right, Bob? I mean, it's wild.
Like brother, like for real though, it's like it's just it. And I called it last night. I'm like, look, man, like I fully anticipate that we're gonna have another filing today, which of course we did. We had a couple. Hennessy's second filing was short and sweet, as per his typical motion work. He gets right to it, Andy's a little wordier, as you'll see. Andy Baldwin drafted this motion, and before, in case there's any of those JBNers, any of the bows that out there that have never kind of followed any of our Delphi coverage over here at Defense Diaries. Very short primer. Back in February 13th of 2017, two beautiful young teenage girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, had the day off school. There they are. Rest in peace, you little angels. They were supposed to be in school that day. It was a snow day that ended up not being utilized, so they gave the kids off school. The girls decided they wanted to go out to kind of a nature preserve area near Delphi, Indiana, which is a very small rural town in central Indiana. And so the girls arranged to have actually Libby's sister, Kelsey, drop them off there at the nature preserve. And there's the Mononheim Bridge, there's the Freedom Bridge, and then there's like a trail. It's like a trail system over there. So a lot of people go over there. It's a nice place to spend a day. Great place for kids to go and take photo ops for Snap or Instagram, things like that. So they get dropped off. The plan is that they're supposed to get picked around 4:30 by Libby's dad. And So or maybe it was earlier than that. It might have been 3. I'm starting to get my facts mixed up because I've been like so knee deep into this. And we've been so far removed from the trial on this that those are starting to get lost, and we're hoping to get back into the trial. So the girls are supposed to be picked up by Libby's dad. He gets over there. He's calling, gets no answer, gets concerned, gets out of the car, walks down to the trail, no sign of the girls. Starts calling everybody. Hey, have you seen the girls? Both sets of families are calling all around to see if the girls have ended up at a friend's house. Are they with family somewhere? Has anybody heard from them? And there's nothing. So by 5:30, they call it into law enforcement. And at that point, it's all hands on deck. They start a massive search. Of course, it's early February, so it gets dark early. So they end up calling the search relatively early. Now, they did have a drone up there, is from what I understand, a heat-seeking drone that they were flying up around, over where they believed that the girls were abducted from, and nothing happened. So following morning, unfortunately, the girls were found not alive. And it was relatively close to the bridge area. It was on a piece of private property owned by a gentleman named Ron Logan. What? Oh, Allison's here. She's taking a nap. She was talking to me. So obviously everybody's horrified at that point. Law enforcement keeps this investigation super quiet. Within a couple of days, they end up releasing a picture of a guy on the high bridge walking across the trestle, and a trestle is a railroad tracks that run over a body of water, typically a river. And so the law enforcement goes out and they say, okay, well, we believe that this is the person that abducted Abby and Libby, with the hope being that they put this picture out that somebody's going to come forward. Small town, that, hey, somebody's going to recognize this person. Somebody's going to say, oh my God, I know who it is. And they're going to call it in. So, in an important part of that story is that photograph came from Libby's phone, who was brave enough to be taking a video of everything that was occurring while it was occurring. So there's a 40+ second video that was captured on her phone, wherein law enforcement believes that she captured one of the people or the person who was involved in the abduction and the homicides. So that picture goes out. A day or two later, they end up releasing a small bit of sound where it's just a guy saying, "Down the hill, girls." And so that like the image and the sound kind of captured the attention of the nation. In the case became known as kind of Down the Hill. I've had Barb McDonald, who did the documentary on with Allie and I over on our channel, and then I had Susan Hendricks, who had done had written the book. So Barb had done the Down the Hill podcast and documentary, and then Susan Hendricks had written the book called Down the Hill, her descent into the murder, double homicides. So, and they were both on our show. And, the thing goes cold for 5 years. Like I could spend hours talking about this, but I'm just trying to give you guys an overview so that when I'm going through this motion, those of you who have no idea what the case is or what it's about will have kind of an idea. Case goes cold for 5 years. All kinds of names were thrown out. You can imagine the web sleuth community was going nuts. They had all kinds of people on the radar, but there was never an arrest made. And during that entirety of that time, law enforcement was incredibly close-lipped about any details of the crime. Like, we had no idea what had, and of course everybody was speculating. There were people saying that there were leaks and that they knew what the crime scene looked like, and it was unusual, and all, but no one knew for certain because law enforcement just kept it on lock. So fast forward to October 22nd, I think it was 2022. Like at this point, it's a blur. I think it was 2022. I feel secure. Seems crazy for as much as I cover this case that I can't remember every date, but it's like, it's
Well,
all
when there's that many documents, Bob, and you know, I mean,
it's just a lot. So I'm fairly certain the arrest took place in October of 2022. And it's a guy named Rick Allen, or Richard Allen. So Richard Allen happened to be a resident of Delphi, which is a very small town. I think it's around 3,000 people live there. Very small town, close knit. He worked at the CVS and had been working there for years. So if you live in a small town, like, or anywhere you live, like if you go to a store all the time, you see the people that work there all the time. So I mean, it's like he was a known person. I mean, it's like people in town knew who he was. Has no criminal history at all. He gets arrested, and what happens initially is that the state doesn't, like, typically when there's arrest warrant, as you guys have seen in other cases, like with Koberger case, the Idaho 4 case, and the bail application when Huerman was arrested. Those are two of the more recent examples that when those arrests take place, we immediately get the probable cause affidavit, or in the instance of Huerman, that was a bail application, which would have been a probable cause affidavit, but they went to a grand jury and indicted him. So it was called a bail application. But what both of those documents did is it laid out the state's theory of the case in terms of why they're believing that this person is the person responsible for the homicides. So that doesn't come out like after the arrest. So they arrest this guy after 5 years, and everybody's like, well, and those are public documents, right? They're supposed to be public documents. Like, I mean, that's the Constitution calls for the trials are to be held in the public. We need transparency to make sure that we know what the courts are doing, to make sure we know what the prosecutors and law enforcement are doing. We need that transparency. So this thing doesn't come out for an extended period of time until people are like, what is going on? There's going to be an extenuating, exceptional circumstances for it to be sealed. Like, for instance, a good reason for it to be sealed is if it named individuals that could be considered additional suspects, or it had facts in there that they were concerned that additional suspects may see them and it would clue them in that they're hot on their trail. So when the thing finally drops, I read it, and I did a podcast episode on it, and I'm like, what? Like there was nothing in it that required it to be sealed. So immediately I'm suspicious. I'm wondering why they're being so secretive, and like, what was the purpose of sealing this document? And moreover, I just read through the PCA, and it read weak to me. It read like it leaned innocent. Like they just didn't have much in there. So I spent months, and this is all going on when Jay is covering Murdoch. I'm kind of doing double duty. I'm obviously watching Murdoch. I'm going through with the Delphi stuff. I'm debating people online about, on Twitter especially, about how much that they typically put in a PCA. People were under the misapprehension that they put the bare minimum, which just isn't true. It's not, they're going to put their best foot forward in the PCA because we can attack it as defense attorneys. And moreover, it's the state's first opportunity to get their theory of the case out to the public in mass. They're not going to put out just some bare bones PCA. Now, is that to say that they put everything in there? Of course not. There's going to be a lot of evidence that doesn't rise to the level where they feel like they need to put it in. But in terms of having the strongest evidence that they have at the time, they're going to put it in there. There's no reason for them to hold it back because we're getting it all in discovery. And they also know that we can attack that particular warrant if we feel that the evidence is too weak. So, and that's a tough call for a prosecutor who's working with law enforcement to draft these PCAs to figure out, okay, well, do we want to put this in or keep it out in light of the fact that we know the defense can try to file a motion to quash the arrest? So at any rate, I was not impressed. I was not impressed with it. And then in December, we get the Koberger arrest. And so I made it a point to compare those two things. I wanted to compare so people could see what the difference between what I consider to be a weak probable cause affidavit and what I consider to be a strong probable cause affidavit in terms of the evidence that they were able to compile. So that basically gives you the background. Now, what's been going on, and I'm not going to torture Jay with what's been going on for the last year and a half in this trial, but I've never seen anything like it. It has been just an absolute shit show procedurally, not even dealing with the underlying case, because my position on that in terms of innocence or guilt, I have my feelings on it. I tend to think that Rick Allen's innocent based on numerous things, but that's always subject to trial. I have in no way, shape, or form. I'm not privy to the discovery. I don't know what all the evidence is. I just know what it looks like when defense attorneys believe with every fiber of their being that their client is actually innocent. And I know what it looks like when the state seems to be doing everything in its power, no matter how untoward it may be, to get a conviction in a case. And I know what a weak PCA looks like. So those three things have me on the fence leaning innocent, but I don't know. But I don't know. I have to wait for trial, like all of us do. There's people that think he's guilty. There's people that think, I think that that's more than ample evidence. He was there. He's the bridge guy. How can he not be the guy? They found an unspent casing that they matched to his gun. He made a confession in jail. How could it not be the guy? So there's the other side of it. We've got these two sides of it. And so what we've been going through for the past 14, 15 months is just this battle. So typically with a PCA, it's the only thing that sits out there. All of you that love true crime content and have been watching and reading and just, burying yourself in true crime because it's so fascinating. That most content that we've consumed for most of our lives is always from the state's perspective. You're always hearing from the cops. You're always hearing from the prosecutors. And that's what we know typically about true crime. You rarely hear from the defense attorneys unless they're, casting them in some kind of role as being shitbag scumbags who are, getting people off on technicalities. Like that's what traditionally how they like to cast the defense attorney, which I, for 2.5 years, have been trying to get people to understand what we really do, because it ain't that. So you got the PCA out there, which is very typical. We always see that. That's why people always think that people are guilty, because you're hearing the state's theory of the case and that alone. You're not hearing another side of it until trial. I don't know. I mean, to me, that seems inequitable. Like the scales of justice are like that there, right? It's not this. When you're getting to hear one side of a story, and that's all it is, a state's theory of the case. They weren't there. I say it all the time. Cops weren't there, prosecutor wasn't there, I wasn't there, defense attorneys weren't there. None of us were there. So all we can do is look at the evidence and come up with a theory of what we think happened. So what the defense did in this case, which was unusual, is that they dropped this massive 136-page memo where they basically laid out their entire defense. They named at least 5 different individuals that they believe are better suspects than Richard Allen in terms of committing the crime. And it had this underlying theme that these guys all practice some kind of Norse paganism religion and all worshiped Odin, like the Norse god. So immediately people are like, oh, it's fantasy. It's the craziest. It's satanic panic all over again. Like what is like, this is insane. It's smoke and mirrors from the defense. In the meantime, you have to understand that everything that they put in the memo came directly from the discovery that was tendered to them by the state. None of this was stuff made up of a whole cloth. This was all presented to them, turned over to them in discovery. And it was all right there in the discovery in different little places, hidden. You know, they tried to spread it out so that it wasn't like, oh, well, here was our big investigation to Odinus, and we decided to move to a different path. No, they had to like it was the needle in the haystack type thing. They had to dig through and ultimately come to the conclusion that there were 3 cops who continued to investigate that angle, that potential angle, for months. And that these 3 cops, when Richard Allen was arrested, one of them, Todd Click, sent a letter, which was again buried in the discovery and wasn't turned over until way late. That Todd Click, one of these cops, had sent a letter to McClelland saying, I need to understand why you just arrested Rick Allen, because I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So McClelland and I can't remember if it was Liggett or Holman or Carter, one of the cops, you know, they're like, don't worry about it. He's the guy. He's the guy. We got the right guy. And that Click wasn't satisfied with it. Click didn't understand. He's like, didn't you look at what we put together? So within that memo, there's just massive amounts of things that come out that to me are very disturbing. You know, it, like in the search for justice for the killer or killers of these 2 girls, we really need to find the right people or persons who did it, right? To get justice. I mean, to just get a conviction on somebody, if that somebody isn't that person who actually committed the crime, is not justice, like in any world, you know? So there's enough there to where I'm like, man, like, how did they ignore this? You
I know.
know,
I mean, I was
yeah,
just
go
gonna say
ahead.
that's
Jay.
what I was just gonna say. That's what we first did. You text. This is before you had a channel. You're like, holy shit, Jay, we need to go live. We went live, and I just remember going through it with you, and I'm like, this can't be real, and it's real. And I just want to say before you continue, Bob, but we've got 520 people in here. Just want to thank you all for being here, and just let you know because I don't think we mentioned this, but we will absolutely. If there's a verdict, we're going to pivot
Yes.
over there, folks. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. If there's a verdict in the James Crumbley case, we will pivot over there. But we figured in the meantime, this is a big filing. Let's go through it. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, let's thank you for doing that. Yeah, we're doing double duty, Jay and I here. Jay and I have been covering what we feel is a very, very important case to this country, the James Crumbley trial, which is related to the Oxford shootings. And the wife has already been convicted. What was her trial? A month ago, Jay? Something like that?
Yeah, and her sentencing is like April 9th. Yeah, it was like a month. I think it was almost like exactly a month ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's imminent. So Jay and I have been covering this trial. Closings took place yesterday. So right now, the jury's deliberating. I think they deliberated a couple hours yesterday. They called it a day. They're back in there. And Jay and I know, you know, it's much like back in the days before cell phones, like anytime you went to go take a shit and like the phone would ring as soon as you sat on the toilet, like that's what would have happened. Like as soon as we started this. So we wanted to do a dual stream. Jay's going to be keeping an eye on it. If we get news that the verdicts come down, we will pivot over there. So it's fun. We're going to do double duty, 2 birds with 1 stone. Yeah, I think they call it a twofer in the business, Jay. I think that's what they call it, a twofer.
Love it.
All right, so let's start going through this thing, man.
All right.
So throw it up there, Jay, and then I'm going to read on my. I'm going to read on mine. So like, try to keep up with me in terms of scrolling. All right,
gotcha.
if you can.
I got you.
It's like I've had it where I've had Stevie try to scroll for me, and it's tough.
I got you.
I'm like, Stevie, where you at, man? Like, wait, dude, because Stevie can lose concentration sometimes.
But before you do, I just got to thank. I got a super sticker from Jennifer, Atticus, Kimmy's Bless, and then Ashley just gave out 10 memberships. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate your support so much. We'll probably wait till the end once we start thanking everyone, but we both appreciate all you being here and supporting us.
We do. We love and adore you guys. We love and adore you guys. Thank you so much. All right. So what we've got here, Jay, which harkens back to the first Frank's memo, is Richard Allen's third Frank's memo, or Frank's notice and request for Frank's hearing based on newly discovered evidence and request for findings of fact and conclusions of law upon any ruling on this request. Now that's snarky, just so you know right away, because what's been going on with this case is that the Judge Gull, has, for almost every defense motion that has been filed, she has not been conducting hearings, which on some motions is fine. You know, some motions are legal argument only, like where you're not expecting to put witnesses on. And in that type of situation, there's no issue with that. However, there's been motions to suppress, this Frank's motion, where you would absolutely be putting witnesses on the stand, right? And so she's been denying these without hearing. But more problematic than that is that she's denying them without giving any basis in the law as to why she denied them. And when you're building an appellate record, what? You gotta go to court. Oh, my poor Allie Bear. She's back there living the nightmare right now. So at any rate, you know, you've got these situations where she's just putting like kind of blank minute orders where she's saying, I've reviewed the motions and I've denied it without hearing. It's like kind of her famous like catchphrase. So when they're saying here that it's a Frank's notice and a request for Frank's hearing based upon newly discovered evidence, and in the heading of it, they're saying in a request for findings of facts and conclusions of law upon any ruling on this request. So they're putting it in the heading that they're requesting that Gull actually, if she's going to deny it, to give a factual and legal basis for why she did so. Because you need that for the appellate record, you know.
And it seems like to me, to put that in bold in the title, it's like, you cannot miss this. We know you're fudging this and you're not really reading anything, but if you can't miss this title in bold, madam.
Exactly. All right, so let's start digging in. Comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel, and files his third Frank's notice and request for Frank's hearing based upon newly discovered evidence. In support of said motion, the accused states the following. 1, on September 18th, 2023, the defense filed its first Frank's notice, which consisted of a 136-page memo I was just telling you guys about, in support, detailing 1, that certain evidence that Tony Liggett, who is the sheriff of Carroll County, failed to include in his search warrant application. 2, that certain evidence was detailed in his search warrant application that was false. And 3, that evidence that law enforcement had acted in an intentional manner on multiple instances, attempting to conceal evidence from the defense and failing to tell the truth under oath concerning certain evidence. Paragraph 2, the defense incorporates the contents of its first Frank's notice and memorandum into this document. So when you hear language about things being incorporated, so like in a case like that, in many cases, there's going to be multiple motions filed, or sometimes like in civil cases, they'll file a complaint, and you know how it went, Jay, like from your days as an adjuster, you know, you'll file a complaint and, you know, then you amend it, but you'll incorporate everything from the first memo so that it's included in this memo too. So for when you see that incorporates, you're now pretending that this is now a 136-page memo plus 9. All right, so they've incorporated the first memo and the second memo, but which we'll get to. So that's what that language means, in case you guys are ever wondering what it means. Paragraph 3, on October 3rd, 2023, the defense filed its second Frank's notice detailing how the prosecution and law enforcement had attempted to conceal the identity of a Purdue professor whose testimony contradicted that of law enforcement officers Tony Liggett and Jerry Holman. This notice was provided as a supplement to the first Frank's notice in order to bolster the defense contention that the state of Indiana and law enforcement were acting intentionally and or with reckless disregard of the truth to further support the request for a Frank's hearing. Okay, paragraph 4. And they'll get into the details of this professor thing. This is going to, like, if you don't know anything about this case, and when you start hearing some of the shit that's going on, it's going to blow your mind.
You know, Bob,
it just is.
Just real quick, I'll just say this: the thing that, for folks who don't know, for 18 years before I started doing this, like a year ago, I was a litigation adjuster in civil cases, bodily injury. But what this case reeks of that I used to have to worry about all the time, and I got, it's different in a criminal case, but as an insurance adjuster, bad faith. You're supposed to act in good faith. And what we were always worried about as an insurance company was bad faith, because that meant you weren't really following by the rules. And if you weren't following by the rules, the person that you were insuring, like whoever, like if I have an insurance contract, if my company is acting within bad faith, then you're no longer, you don't just get the policy from the car insurance. You can go after the insurance company, because
Exactly.
So this thing just reeks of bad faith to me as an outsider who doesn't really.
Very astute, Jay. Very astute. And it's a great analogy, actually. I mean, because like good faith is something, like I was talking about it kind of at length the other night, with respect to discovery being turned over. And we'll get into that quite a bit in this particular memo. But, like we don't know as defense attorneys, number one, what law enforcement collected and what evidence they have and what reports they've done. And the way that discovery works is that the cops turn it over to the prosecutor. Okay. And then the prosecutor goes through it and then they turn it over to us. So we have no way to know unless we're able to intuit it, or we find out through our own investigation that somebody was interviewed on 2 occasions, but they only gave us a report or audio and video of one of the interviews. You know what I mean? It's like we have to run into it somewhere, because we're not going to be able to intuitively know it, because we have no idea what they've collected. So there's a huge element of good faith that the prosecutor is being ethical, because you have to know no prosecutor is going to be like, when they've tunnel visioned on a suspect and they've made the arrest and they've spent all the money on the investigation and they've decided this is the person that we're going to go all in on, they are not going to be happy if they find exculpatory evidence exists. They're not going to be like saying, hey, guess what? Calling me, hey, you'll never guess, dude, I found some evidence and get your guy off. Like, that's not how it works, right? I mean, it's the antithesis of that. So, we have to have their good faith in hoping that they're doing their job properly and that they're being honest and ethical. So it was a great point, Jay.
Thank you.
Paragraph 4, the defense incorporates the contents of its second Frank's notice filed on October 3rd of 2023 and into this document. So same concept there. So the second Franks, they're incorporating into this as well. So paragraph 5, after Franks 1 and 2 were filed just before the defense was kicked off, which I didn't even get you, like for you guys that haven't. So the defense has been kicked off the case and brought back on by the Supreme Court of Indiana. When I tell you that this case is like no other case out there, it's not like as much as I would have loved to get into Adelson with Jay, it was like it would have been too much, because they're two just insane cases that really kind of require all your attention.
I couldn't even drive. Everything's blurry. I don't know what to do.
By the way, folks, think of like Bob said before, defense attorneys who really believe in their client. They were kicked off the case and they fought to get back on there. Talk about cases attorneys who believe that, if they just thought this was like a throwaway case, you think they'd be fighting like they're fighting now? I mean, where all the evidence was against their client? I don't think so.
I mean, like at some point, stripping away all the legalese and just looking at it with common sense, I mean, and it's like you always hear lawyers talking to jurors, in closings, that you have to incorporate your own life experience and your own common sense when reaching a verdict, right? So it's like, I don't know. I mean, it probably is the way that it seems it is. If it's an Occam's razor type thing, that it's like, it's the way that it seems it is. It's the most logical explanation for it. And that's probably what it is, and it's just one of those things where when law enforcement has a vested interest, and they certainly do with Rick Allen being the guy, people, because like I see it all the time, like, how are they still trying this guy? It's crazy. I'm like, because that's how it works. It's very, very rare for you to see an arrest made on a high profile case. Like Morphew is one of the few that I could think of in recent vintage, where there was an arrest made and then they nollie prost it. And then Baldwin on a much smaller scale, You know, he was arrested and they nolly-prossed it, they dropped it, but with the understanding that they could bring it back, you know? I mean, that's so, but for the most part, it doesn't happen. You know, once they're locked in, they're going to the mat, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. And that's where we're at here. Like this thing set for trial May 13th. The defense filed a speedy demand it's set. Like it had gotten set when they got kicked off, and they put the 2 new lawyers in for October, late October of this year. The new guys came back and they said, we were ready January 8th. So now we're still ready. And she set the date for May 13th. All right. So after Franks 1 and Franks 2 were filed just before the defense was kicked off the case in October 2023, the defense received certain geofencing evidence that the defense, did not have an opportunity to fully examine, explore, or discuss with its experts. Now, I was hitting our homie Joe Jackalone up today, and I think I'm going to be doing, I'm putting together, I asked Joe if he's got a geofencing guy, and he does. So I think be on the lookout. Probably Joe loves to do shit on Saturdays. He's a Saturday guy. Joe's like a grandpa, you know. He's like, I want to do my Saturday show, and it's gonna be great. So you know, it's like I love Joe Jackalone so much. He's amazing. So I'm hoping to have Joe and his geofencing expert on. So to explain to all of us the technology. I mean, I know we can all Google it, but it's nice to have somebody in law enforcement that actually deals with it so that we have a better understanding. So keep an eye out for that. I'm in the process of getting that set up. So just after the defense was reinstated on the case in January of 2024, it received certain discovery in the form of a September 22nd, 2023 report authored by Sergeant Jerry Holman, purportedly memorializing an interview that Holman had with a former Purdue professor named Jeffrey Turco. So it's like this whole thing is crazy. So paragraph 7, before the geofencing evidence and Holman's September 22nd, 2023 report provided new information that supports the defense request for a Franks hearing. All right. And I explain what a Franks hearing is. There's got to be a preliminary finding. Like the defense just can't come in with a load of bullshit and say, we want a Franks hearing. They got to come with some receipts. They have to come with some proof that they can show that the cop lied when he was in front of the judge getting the warrant. And these dudes came with it. Like that memo, I don't know, it had some enormous amount of exhibits, like in an excess of 150 exhibits attached to that memo. So they came with the receipts, which again, all came from the state's discovery. All right. So before the geofencing evidence in Holman's September 22, 2023 report provide new information that supports the defense request for a Franks hearing. Paragraph 8, specifically, the defense received certain geofencing evidence. And this, so when I read this, it blew my mind. That at least 3 persons were in and around the crime scene at a time while the murders were taking place, according to law enforcement timelines. And none of the owners of the phone have any connection to Richard Allen. I'm going to read that again, just in case you didn't hear it. Specifically, the defense received certain geofencing evidence that at least 3 persons were in and around the crime scene at the time while the murders were taking place, according to law enforcement timelines, and none of the owners of the phone have any connection to Richard Allen. So paragraph 9, the geofencing evidence would provide evidence of any of the following scenarios. A, those persons walking with the phones are witnesses that would have observed the murderers, which could include Richard Allen, right? Theoretically, if Richard Allen's the guy, you'd want to speak to these people. They were at or around the crime scene. So if you're on the Richard Allen's guilty train, you should want us to be able to speak to these people. We should want law enforcement to interview these people, right? No matter which side of this you're on. Makes sense. So those persons walking with the phones are witnesses that would have observed the murderers as they were taking place. And none of them have identified Richard Allen, or Those persons walking with the phones were witnesses who observed nothing, as the murders did not take place on the afternoon of February 13th, 2023. But the victims were taken to the crime scene after the search was called off. Interesting concept.
Yeah.
And that's been out there. And C, those persons walking with the phones were participants in the murders. Those are all possibilities. So, said geofencing, paragraph 10, evidence was so important to somebody involved in the investigation that they created a map and plotted the movements of these persons, including movements that show that at least one of these persons was within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene at a time while the murders would have been committed, according to law enforcement's timelines. The phones, once again, had no connection to Richard Allen. Did you get that one? Paragraph 11. Furthermore, the map shows that the other two phones and the persons carrying those phones were in and around the crime scene between 12:39:54 p.m. and 5:49 p.m. on February 13th of 2017. That essentially covers the entire timeline that the state has. You know, there's been two timelines for Allen. One where he claims he was there from 12 to 1:30, and where he said he was from 1:30 to 3. You know, they think that the girls were killed sometime after 3:07 because of the Snapchats. You know, it's similar to Murdoch in terms of they're kind of trying to establish a time of death based on when the cell phone usage stopped, which we know is very effective. It was very effective in Murdoch. Yeah, that was like the first time I had ever seen. It was everything. That was the first time I had seen law enforcement and or a medical examiner basically establish a time of death based on phone usage, historical, and when it stopped. And it's pretty.
And no one batted an eye. They were like, "Yeah, that makes sense." Their phones were off.
Makes sense. We're all like, these are like genetically connected to us now. I mean, like when you're like, it's like if you pull out of your house and are like 4 or 5 blocks away and you realize you forgot your phone, it's like hysterics set in. You got to turn around. We're late. It's like, so you can tell that happens quite a bit with my wife.
Does she?
Oh man. Oh my God. All this shit that you're going to forget. How do you she's the sweetest though.
I'm glad that you're going to do it. You're going to do a thing on geofencing because, like, in my baby mind, in my child mind, I'm picturing Batman, the new Batman, where like they have every phone together on the screen and they could see where everyone is, and that's how like what is geofencing basically? Is it they can get records of every single phone in that area at that time and make a map out of it? Like, who subpoenas all that?
I think so. From what I've been doing reading on it because I've never had geofencing be a part of any of my cases. So I've never had the opportunity to hire an expert to like really kind of probe, but it sounds like that it uses GPS technology and like RFID technology, and that it creates like these like invisible zones. And then it was originally in that like you can like business owners use it. So, for instance, a good example is, so they create these geo zones where, like, if you and I are walking, like, and we're in Manhattan, or we're in the Bronx, or we're in Brooklyn, wherever we're at, we're walking around and we're walking past like some retail stores, and we're on our phone, and it'll pop up that once we've walked through that geo fence. It'll pop up on our phone and it'll say, "Oh, come eat at this restaurant. It's right down the street from you." Okay. So that's what it. So I think it was originally started as kind of a marketing thing because we're all on the grid. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then obviously law enforcement saw some pretty heavy duty utility in it in terms of saying, "All right, well now we're going to be able to track everybody everywhere using these geofencing things." So. That's my very limited understanding of it. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert about it. That's exactly why I reached out to Joey Jackalone, and he's going to bring his guy on. You guys should come. It'll be interesting because like the the geofencing is here to stay until we think of something better. And we're going to be starting to see it in a lot of trials. So it's, you know, and it's basically, it's better than triangulating. It's different than triangulating. It's not like with towers. It's a different technology. That I know. I saw somebody in the chat saying it's triangulating. It's not, I understand that it's different than triangulating. But I might be wrong. I still could be wrong. Just what I've seen, it sounds like it's different, because you know how they try to triangulate people with the towers.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
with kind of with the area.
You can see the circle and the dot in between. They're close to it, but not exactly.
Right. Exactly. And like with the geofencing, like wherever, you know, the geofence was set up, like when you enter that geofencing area, you know, they know there is no trying to guess. There's no real margin of error, like where you can get some massive margins of error with triangulating with cell phone towers. You know, there's big gaping holes, or you could be on one tower or the other. If you have multiple towers, it's different. It's different, but I'll know more. So if I'm giving you wrong intel, I apologize, but I know the concept is right. But in terms of whether it uses triangulation, I'm not so sure, because I just know that they use that with towers. It could be for both, for certain. So that's why I'm having an expert on. All right. So said geofencing was so important. I want to read this one again. To somebody involved in the investigation, that they created a map, plotted the movements of these persons, including movements that show that at least one of these persons was within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene at a time while the murders would have been committed according to law enforcement's timelines. The phones, once again, had no connection to Richard Allen. Furthermore, the map shows that two other phones, or the other two phones, and the persons carrying those phones were in and around the crime scene between 12:39:54 p.m. and 5:49 p.m. on February 13, 2017. The defense has sought out, but has not been provided any documents or reports that contradict or refute said geofencing evidence, but have not found such evidence, nor has the prosecutor provided any when the defense requested reports on said geofencing. 13, when Tony Liggett, so what they're saying there is they're basically saying, okay, are we reading this wrong? Are we looking at this and there's clearly three fucking people that are walking around the crime scene? Like, we're reading this wrong, right? So like, where's the shit that like clears this up for us? Because like otherwise, there were three people that you failed to interview that were around the crime scene at the, you know, at the time that you say that it happened, and you don't have any reports, you don't have any information about interviewing these people at all. So like, send us the info that clarifies what we're looking at, because we must be screwing this up. Like, that's what they're saying there, right? So 13, when Tony Liggett drafted his affidavit for search warrant of Richard Allen's home, he, Liggett, concealed from Judge Diener, who was the original judge who issued both the search warrant and the arrest warrant, from Judge Diener, the fact that at least three phones and the people using these phones were moving in and around the crime scene at the times when the murders would have been taking place, according to law enforcement timelines, and that Richard Allen was not in any way connected with those phones. 14, Tony Liggett should have notified Judge Diener that certain people who are not named Richard Allen nor connected to Richard Allen were moving in and around the crime scene at a time when Liggett claims the murders were being committed. And that's what I was telling you all about Frank's. It doesn't have to be outward lies. It could be omissions where they're holding back things that, if the judge heard it, might give the judge pause as to issuing a warrant. Like that. Like if you're sitting on the bench, Jay, and I come in and I tell you, oh yeah, we got this guy on the bridge, three chicks, you know, he's wearing the same shit. He admitted it. You know, we found a shell casing that we say matches, you know, and you're like, all right, sounds good. Warrant issued, you know, but if I come in and say, so we got this guy on the bridge wearing the same stuff, but, you know, we also have got three people around the crime scene who we haven't identified yet that were there during this period of time when we think the murders happened. Do you want to give us that warrant yet? I mean, it might give you pause. You know what I mean?
My favorite part of that.
Yeah, you know, you might be like, tell me more about these three people. Like, what have you done to try to find them? Have you tried to locate these people?
Bob, my favorite part of that is how you just kind of went into Dup Bear's voice. You went in when you did that. You were almost going Dup Bears, like you were that voice.
Sausage. All right.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, dude, as you can imagine, I was pretty big super fan of the super fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So 15, it is reasonable to conclude that if Tony Liggett had notified Judge Diener that certain people not named Richard Allen nor connected to Richard Allen were moving in and around the crime scene, then Judge Diener would not have signed the affidavit, especially based on the paucity of evidence otherwise contained in the affidavit connecting Richard Allen to the murders. See, I mean, it doesn't surprise me the defense attorneys think that thing's weak too, but 16, said geofencing information would have provided evidence to Judge Diener that negated Richard Allen's presence at the crime scene. Liggett should have told Judge Diener that crucial, relevant, and exculpatory information, which had been available since 2017, especially when Liggett's affidavit was written in October of 2022, over 5 years later. Paragraph 17. Additionally, Sergeant Holman's September 22nd, 2023 memorialization of his interview with Jeffrey Turco, who again is the Purdue professor, once again reveals that he, Holman, who's an Indiana State Trooper, I believe, attempted to, Sleuthy's probably in there, she'll correct me if I'm wrong, attempted to deceive the reader of said report by leaving out key information and words uttered from the mouth of Turco concerning the likelihood that the sticks left behind were in fact runes, making Odinism's involvement in the murders more likely and worth investigating. And that's in parentheticals. Holman also failed to recite the full words of Turco concerning the plausibility that those who left the runes behind were involved in some type of human sacrifice. And that human sacrifice thing is what got people like, oh, this is crazy shit. Like this is like some work of fiction. Like this is implausible. Like, you know, because if you remember back when the Satanic Panic was happening, and you know, and then go to the West Memphis 3, you know, and like they were saying that those kids were all involved in some kind of satanic ritual. And thank you, Dizzy. Should have known. Shouldn't have doubted Dizzy. Holman's FBI. So, you know, it's like when that thought of it being perchance a ritual, the people that were like, they couldn't accept it as even a possibility. You know what I mean? Despite the fact that, like, Jay, when you and I were doing it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. It was like we're going through Brad Holder. We're going through Brad Holder's Facebook, and I'm like, and like some of there's runes and these pictures and some of the stuff. I'm like, and it was blowing my mind. I don't understand why people can't. I mean, I guess I don't know. It was, to me, my head was going to explode that day. We were doing that stream. I was like, I cannot believe that this like it. And the fact that they're hiding it just makes it so insane. Like I can imagine the defense attorney's head must explode too when they're finding out all this stuff that has been hidden from them this whole time. It's been hidden from them, and it's exculpatory. There's 3 phones. They're not Richard Allen's, and they're like, they're not going to tell him. And they anyway.
I mean, you're with me, brother. You're with me.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I mean, dude, I felt the same way, because like you were just digging into their socials, and you're like, okay, well, here's this guy like quoting like Odin scripture type shit. Here's the runes.
You know, all these pictures, and then I think we live. He's like, yeah, come for me, and like this, like I'm like, this guy is nuts.
Yeah, like with the hat. He's like, oh, you think I look like a dickhead with this hat? Do you think I'm the murderer because I have this hat? I look like a real dickhead. I'm like, wow, that guy's a real psychopath. Even if he's not, like, that's not a dude I'm hanging with anytime. You know, it's like, well, I'm not calling that guy out for dinner. Hey, let's go watch a game, hang out. All right. So on September 28th, Holman wrote a report in which Holman, failed to mention the word, quote, rune, end quote, or any derivation thereof when memorializing the words of Turco. Again, Turco's the professor. Runes were a big part of Turco's interview, yet Holman chose to exclude the word rune or any derivation of that word from his report. Just said that, Andy. Andy sometimes writes. He reminds me in his legal writing a little bit of my beautiful, brilliant wife. She'll sometimes, like when she's trying to drive home a point, she'll repeat it. You know what I mean? Just to make sure that they didn't miss it. And I'm like, I think they got it. She's like, I don't know. I don't trust people. Like, you know, sometimes I feel like I got to say shit twice. So instead, the relevant part of Holman's report was the following. So he's saying what should have been, and then this is what was. So in relation to his interview with the Purdue guy. So I asked him, Turco, to summarize his findings, and he said they were inconclusive. In his opinion, he thought that the sticks were placed deliberately, but was unsure what they meant. He said that he provided Sick some educational guesses in his report. I asked him if the Odin religion practiced ritualistic human sacrifices, and he said no. He stated that no evidence or research indicates that religion practicing human sacrifices. He told me if that someone Google searched it, they may see that the Vikings were accused of human sacrifices, but he said that there's no proof of it. I asked him if he ever heard of ritualistic human sacrifices around here, and he said no. He told me not even in Norway, where this type of religion is more prevalent, has he heard of any ritualistic human sacrifices. So that's what his report says. That's what he ends up writing in his report. So 19, what Holman failed to write in his report were Turco's words that more strongly detailed how Odinism was likely involved in the murders due to the likelihood that the sticks were formed into a runic script. Parentheticals, quote, it's a given, end quote. And how it was very plausible that human sacrifice could be a component to said murders. 20. Because Holman had sworn under oath in his October 10, 2023 deposition that the sticks found at the crime scene did not represent, quote, Odinism of any type or cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime, end quote. Holman Depp, page 63, lines 10 through 20. That's where they're citing, you know, the deposition. They depose these guys. In Indiana, they can depose witnesses, including law enforcement, which is a very nice thing for defense attorneys. Typically, we're going in blind in states like we can't depose anybody in criminal cases unless somebody's dying and we don't think they're going to make it to trial. Like there, they can depose witnesses, expert witnesses, lay witnesses, law enforcement. It's nice because then when you get them lying in a deposition, you could bring it out at trial and impeach him. Whereas,
which, by the way,
if you do,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No.
I was going to say, which is, by the way, which is wild that they know this and they're still doing it. They know it's not a state where they're not going to be deposed. They know they're going to be deposed, and they're still so arrogant or don't give a shit that they're still doing this shit. They know they're going to be deposed under oath, and this shit's going to come out. Are they dumb or are they arrogant or both? I don't know.
It blows your mind, right? I'm glad to see that it's blowing your mind as well, because it blows my mind. And people are like, you know, when I'll read through the comments always of our lives, and you know, I'm well known as you are for ranting. You and I are known to have gone on our rants. We're both ranters, which I think is one of the many reasons we're brothers. But you know, and it's like, you know, I'm like, am I missing something here? Like, because I always have to. I'm like, look, I'm a defense guy. I've been a defense attorney. I realize that I look through everything through the filter of a defense attorney. So I'm biased. Like on this case, I'm unequivocally 100% on the defense side of this for many, a multitude of reasons, having nothing to do with the guilt or innocence of Rick Allen at this point. I don't like what's going on with this trial because I've seen the state push defense attorneys around for long enough. And now that I'm on the sidelines, whereas when I was in court, I had to shut the fuck up because I had a judge in front of me who would throw my ass in jail for contempt. I had to keep quiet. I don't have to keep quiet anymore. And now I can advocate for defense attorneys all over this great nation of ours as to what the fuck goes on in these cases all the time. This isn't just this case. This is an extreme example, but this goes on all the time. This thought that all prosecutors are beyond reproach and the most ethical human beings that ever walked the planet is a load of shit. Is that to say that there's not some that are exactly that? Of course there are. Is that an incredibly important function in society? Absolutely. There are monsters out there. We need those lawyers that are willing to take on the challenge of convicting these monsters and putting them away. Don't get me wrong. Both sides are needed, absolutely and fundamentally. But to pretend that there's nothing that untoward happens from prosecutors' offices ever is obscene, or cops. I mean, give me a break. Like coming out of the 40s, 50s, and 60s when everybody thought that Officer Friendly was unimpeachable because the guy had a gun and a badge. You know, like we still ask during voir dire, like we'll always ask the question, like if a cop gets on the stand, and they wear their uniforms for a reason on the stand when they're testifying, unless they're detectives and they wear suits, but you know, they wear it for a reason. It gives an aura of authority, and that aura of authority gives credence to them. It gives them weight. And so we'll ask jurors, we're like, just by way of that person being a cop, are you giving more credence, more weight? Are you trusting them more merely based on what their occupation is? And jurors are oftentimes very, very honest, which is all we ever ask. Like, I'm not sitting there judging a juror if they give me an answer I don't want to hear them. Like, it's the opposite. I'm thankful. They're like, yeah, it's a cop. Cops don't lie. So I'm like, oh, well, thank you. You're excused. You know what I mean? Like, I need to know that.
Right.
So, but it's facts. And still today, I mean, we still always ask that question because it's factual. All right. Where was I, Jay? Do you remember?
I think you're on 21, I believe.
21. All right. Thank you. When I go off on my tangents, man, I lose my place. 21. Turco's words and information that Holman left out of his report include the following. A, after viewing the way the sticks at the crime scene were arranged, quote, it was a given, end quote, that the pattern of sticks was someone's attempt to replicate a Germanic runic script. B, one of Turco's colleagues, a Harvard professor with even more expertise, agreed. C, Odinism is an extreme neo-pagan / neo-heathenism ideology that has the right-wing racist connotations. In parentheticals, Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were known to be involved in extremist / racist groups. D, although he could not necessarily interpret the intended meaning of these sticks formed into runes, the stick configurations were pretty clearly runic, in that he could, quote, certainly imagine that this was somebody's idea, that when you do human sacrifices, you carve runes. Ellipses, which means that there was words in between that. That there are some poetic sources that would sort of support the idea that somebody might have come across that scenario. Seems entirely plausible to me. And that comes from his tape statement when Holman was interviewing him, right? So that's coming from his actual interview with Holman. Again, the defense isn't making it up. Okay, E, furthermore, Dr. Turco discussed how runes were thought to have, quote, magical significance and would be used in incantations and bolded for emphasis, rituals, and that there is a sacrificial connection in mythological poetry. Period. In parentheticals, Turco tape statement 1440 to 15. So again, in parentheticals, according to police reports, Brad Holder told Amber Holder that he and Patrick Westphal had a falling out over something that happened in the woods near a river during a ritual. Now, Holder said that or Westphal, I forget, I saw a creator had one of those two guys after all this shit broke on his channel, and Holder, or I think it was Westphal that he had on. Westphal claimed that falling out was due to the fact that he had found out that Brad Holder had gone to a traditional church on Sunday, and that put him on tilt. Westphal, he's like, what? You're cheating on Odinism? You son of a bitch. We're done. You're dead to me. That type of shit. So that's what Westphal's version of that story is. 22, in other words, here's what Holman did not report or did not write in his report. Turco told me that, quote, it was a given that the arrangement of the sticks were part of a runic script. Investigators have learned that the runes are a feature of those who practice Odinism, and those who practice Odinism are sometimes aligned with racist extremist groups. Brad Holder's son had some type of dating relationship with one of the victims, and Brad Holder was an Odinist fascinated with runes, which are found throughout his Facebook page. Case in point. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were also affiliated with racist extremist groups. Also, and like this was all like on their socials. Like this isn't, you know what I mean? It's like everybody that was reading the memo immediately did what you did and I did. We all went onto their socials and started creeping, you know? Like, oh my God, this guy does. So you delete it. We got to get out there before he deletes it, and he doesn't delete shit.
He's like, he's daring people. He's like, I'm not deleting this until
right. He's like, I'm good with it. I'm good with right. So also, which I mean, if he deleted it, it's the same concept that the people that think that Rick Allen admitted that he was on the bridge or volunteered that he was on the bridge was to get in front of it. Like as soon as it became known, like, cause he gave his statement before he knew that there was a video. So like he wanted to get out there and be like, you know, in case somebody saw him that knew him, he's like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of this. And I'm going to just say I was over there, you know? So that like, that's their concept of why he went and volunteered the information. So like the same thing could be said, but in the opposite, that if he would have went onto his Facebook page and deleted everything, it certainly would have made him look,
that's true,
like a guilt of consciousness type thing, right? So you never know where that falls. Also, Turco admitted that it was entirely plausible that somebody would read something on the internet indicating that Viking religion's involved in human sacrifice, and that same person could have an idea that when conducting a human sacrifice, runes should be carved and that the runes have a magical significance and would be used in rituals. And then Brad Holder told his ex-wife that Brad and Patrick Westphal had a falling out in the woods near a river in February 2017 due to something that happened at a ritual. And just so the reference, the girls were found right by a river. That's why he's stating that there. All right, so 23, instead of including Turco's words detailed in the previous paragraph, Holman wrote that Turco's findings were inconclusive and then failed to even mention the word rune, even a single solitary time. 24, if you're trying to hide Turco's actual opinion about the linkage between the stick configurations in a runic script and the entire plausible opinion that human sacrifice could be a component of the murders, then you would draft your report as Sergeant Holman did, as quoted from his report in paragraph 18 above. 25. If you were trying to provide an accurate accounting of Turco's opinion, then you would write it as written in paragraph 22. Due to Sergeant Holman's sworn testimony from his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Sergeant Holman had a lot at stake when he interviewed Turco. Ideally, in order for Holman's sworn August 10th, 2023 testimony to be true, Turco would have told Holman's words to the effect of that, quote, the configuration is not runic, and therefore that arrangement does not represent Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of a group that would have conducted the crime, end quote. Unfortunately for Sergeant Holman, Turco did not state words to that effect. Quite the opposite. 27. This explains why Sergeant Holman initially attempted to hide the identity of the Purdue professor. See Frank's memo 2. And then attempted to conceal Turco's actual words in Holman's September 2023 report that, quote, it was a given that somebody was trying to replicate a Germanic runic script and that it was entirely plausible that a person believed that human sacrifices involved the use of runes. 28. In defense counsel's experience, some lawyers simply don't listen to a tape recording of an interview, but rather rely on the veracity of police reports that memorialize that interview, which is very true. It's not the best practice, you certainly should be listening to the interviews instead of, relying on what the cops wrote in a report, because those are typically summaries, and they're typically going to be written from the perspective of, we got the right guy. You know what I mean? So, like, the best practice is obviously always to listen to the actual recordings themselves.
I mean, it's just back to my civil experience. That was the case, because police reports were always hearsay. You wanted the depositions, and you wanted a good summary. I was an adjuster, so you wanted a really good summary from your counsel, like, to explain to you what's goes. Because if you look at depositions, if you're not an attorney, it's like pages and pages and pages. You want a good summary from your counsel to let you know, and then you want to know their credibility, the witness. What stuff was not compatible, was inconsistent. So.
Right. It's like you've done a beautiful job with your Adelson videos in doing just that. Like, I mean, like the tone, the tenor in which they're speaking, all of that matters, when you're trying to determine credibility of a witness. Like every little thing counts. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, 29. In this very case, for example, Brad Holder's February 17, 2017 videotape statement was purportedly erased. Like, I don't know if you've heard that one. Yeah. Only a short report memorializing that taped interview exists. Therefore, the defense is being forced. Do I look like a dickhead in this hat? I mean, like, you definitely want to hear that guy, like, what he's saying, right?
Yes.
You think I'm the murderer because I'm wearing this hat? I look like a dickhead. I'll never forget that. Like, as long as I live, I'll never forget that little video. Only a short report memorializing the taped interview exists. Therefore, the defense is being forced to rely entirely on the words and the context of the author of that interview, who chose to include in that report, rather than the entirety of the actual words uttered by Holder. The way that Holman memorialized his interview with Turco, detailed above, should cause alarm about what law enforcement chose to include or not include in their reports. It's a good point, right? Like, that was nicely done. Like, he laid that out with what we know Turco really said, what he wrote in his reports, in order to show that, because he's anticipating that Gull, in terms of the destruction, whether it was purposely, by accident, it was overwritten, whatever the case may be, however these interviews got overwritten, that Gull's going to say, well, you know what? You're good, because you've got their reports. It's not as if you're left with nothing. You can go interview him yourself, which is ridiculous. Like, that guy would never talk to defense counsel. And it's like, but they're anticipating that she's going to say that. So that's why he's putting this in there, to rebut that. He's anticipating what Gull's going to say. So this is his rebuttal to it. And it's strong. It's a strong rebuttal. Okay, that way that the way that Holman memorialized his interview with Turco, detailed above, should cause alarm about what the law enforcement chose to include or not include in the reports. The tape recording is the best evidence. What Brad Holder shared with investigators in his February 17, 2017 interview, but the authors chose to leave out, parentheticals, even innocently, not knowing what was important at the time, and parenthetical, could be exculpatory in nature or lead to exculpatory evidence exonerating Richard Allen. However, at this time, we're expected to simply accept the words written by the authors of Holder's erased interview, provide the full gamut of information needed to protect Richard Allen's rights. Again, Holman's memorialization of Turco's words in this case should cause grave concern to this court as it relates to any erased videotape interviews. And, the significance of it is that, like, these guys are like guys that were looked at for months by additional, like, 3 other cops. These aren't just like a witness that they spoke to. Like, oh yeah, I saw, I saw somebody, and, like, just a little, like, they're, these guys are potential suspects. So to have that thing be erased
it's insane. It's fucking insane. What kind of investigation are you doing? And I'm just thinking, because probably all this shit is going to be denied and it's going to go to trial. How bad this is going to look in trial? All this shit that has happened. You're trying to investigate a double murder of two little girls, and you fucking erase interviews. I mean, as a not a lawyer person, you know, just a moron yelling at a screen. What do you mean you erase the videos? You erase the videos? Your investigation? It's insane. It's insane.
It's nothing better than a J rant. Thanks, man.
Sorry.
I'm here for it. Please do not apologize to me, dude. I love them. All right, 30, because I feel the exact same way. If no one listened to Turco's actual words spoken to Holman on that audio tape, then Holman's deceptive memorialized report would leave the reader with an entirely different perspective than what Turco's words actually revealed. 31, as it relates to the Franks, the defense is required to show that law enforcement acted intentionally when including false information in the affidavit or when omitting important information from the affidavit. All right, 32. Sorry, I had to belch from my Waterloo. Tried to do it under low key. Did you know? Did you tell? 32. It would be highly unlikely that Liggett would admit, quote, I intentionally omitted important information from the affidavit, and I also intentionally included false information in the affidavit. Also, I wrote the affidavit with reckless disregard for the truth. Yes, Andy, that would be highly unlikely that Liggett would say that.
The snark in that one.
Oh, super snarky, super snarky. 33. If the standard to get a Franks hearing is that law enforcement must admit that they acted intentionally or recklessly, then a Franks hearing in and of itself, I would have added that word, is a legal fiction, as no law enforcement officer will ever make such admissions. It's the same concept as when I was there in June in Delphi for they call it a safekeeping hearing, when they were seeking to get Allen moved from, he was at Westville prison at that point. And they put the warden of the prison on there on the stand. And, you know, and like, so when Gull denied that, moving him from a prison, which in case you don't know, typically, almost always, pretrial detainees, people that have not been convicted of a crime, are housed in jails. There's a difference. Prison is where convicts go. Jails, county jails, are where people that get arrested are being held over for bond hearings or whatever the case may be, or are awaiting trial because they can't afford bond. They're usually housed in jails almost all the time. He is in, you know, he was in the Westville House of Pain, and now he's in the Wabash House of Pain. You know, surrounded by convicted monsters all over the place who hate child killers or prospective child killers. You know, it's like they don't care about the presumption of innocence in prisons. You know, it's like all the concern about Richard Allen making it to trial is legitimate. Because if anybody knows anything about prisons, you know, they hide away pedophiles and child killers typically in prisons because they'll get killed. Like there's it's an honor code amongst prisoners that people that do harm to kids ain't no damn good, and you got to go. That's it. Okay, so if the standard, oh wait, no, I think I read that one. Okay, so 34. Therefore, the defense is left with providing information of times and occasions when law enforcement attempted to conceal evidence or falsify information in other contexts in the case. 35. Franks 1 and 2 provide multiple examples of law enforcement concealing or attempting to conceal evidence and of law enforcement not telling the truth under oath, all backed up with exhibits that support these contentions. 36. In Section 3 of September 18th, 2023, Frank's memorandum, the defense provided irrefutable evidence that Liggett provided false information in his affidavit concerning the words that Sarah Carbaugh, who was one of the witnesses that saw somebody walking from the bridge that day, like away from the crime scene, that Sarah Carbaugh spoke face-to-face with Tony Liggett in 2017 when describing the man she saw on the road just before 4 p.m. Liggett told Judge Diener that the man Carbaugh observed was the same man that Bletchley Bear observed on the Monon High Bridge approximately 2 hours earlier. The problem was that Carbaugh told Liggett in 2017 concerning this man's description was not the same as Betty Blair's description, i.e. Liggett did not tell the truth. 37, Liggett then misrepresented, and like, so all of this was in the original Frank's memo. And like, even though he incorporated it, he's thrown it in here again, just a reminder, because Gull had admitted openly that she hadn't read the full memo and that she hadn't looked any of the exhibits at the time that she removed them from the case. Right. And so I'm to believe that the two guys she removed from the case in October, that during the period of time, and it took from October to December to get them back on, maybe it was in January. I can't even remember the date. It's all a blur. You know, when they went up to the Supreme Court, it might have been mid-January. It might have been mid-December. I can't remember. I honestly cannot remember. Somebody will put it in the chat. You know, but like we're supposed to believe that after these guys are removed and she's thinking, oh, thank God, there goes their whack defense. Like now I don't have to read that piece of shit. You know, that somehow she read it, because she then denied it when they're reinstated, you know, and without hearing, of course, and without any kind of basis in the law. Yeah, I'm just not, but so that's why he's including it again. Just a reminder in case she forgot, or on the off chance that she didn't read it at all. Liggett then misrepresented Carbaugh's words so they were consistent with Blair's description, and then, for good measure, added that Carbaugh observed blood on the man walking on the road. That is not what she told Liggett to his face in 2017, i.e., Liggett did not tell the truth. 38. The defense would ask the court to reread. Oh, see, Section 3 in its entirety, and also to review the attached exhibits to the September 18th, 2023 Frank's memo that provide the absolute proof that Liggett misrepresented Carbaugh's words. 39. The defense would ask the court to reread Section 3 in its entirety and to also review the attached exhibits that provide evidence that Liggett omitted crucial information concerning Betsy Blair's description of the man she observed from only 50 feet away on the High Bridge, as well as the description of a vehicle found at the CPS lot after she left the trail that does not match any of Richard Allen's vehicles. 40. The defense would ask the court to reread the rest of Frank's 1 and 2 in order to gain perspective of the many instances of law enforcement not telling the truth or attempting to conceal evidence and the truth. 41. This third Frank's memo, or third Frank's notice, provides additional evidence of omitted information of which Judge Diener should have been advised concerning 3 phones shown to be moving in and around the crime scene at the time when law enforcement would state the murders were being committed. 42. This third Frank's memo, or notice, I keep calling it a memo, provides additional evidence that Sergeant Holman's sworn testimony was false concerning the findings of the Purdue professor, as Turco's own words confirm in his September 19th, 2023 interview. 43. This third Frank's notice provides additional evidence of law enforcement's intentionality of concealing evidence, as Sergeant Holman's September 22nd, 2023 report attempted to conceal the actual words of Jeffrey Turco. Again, Sergeant Holman had sworn under oath that Turco did not find Odinism or cults as being involved in the murders, but Turco's own words show Holman's testimony to be false. It was in Holman's best interest, therefore, to omit or water down much of Turco's own words in his report, which is exactly what Holman did. The defense is asking, based upon this third Frank's notice, as well as the other Frank's notices, to set this matter for a Frank's hearing, to argue that all fruits of the search of Richard Allen's home be suppressed. Additionally, the defense requests that on this serious matter raised in Frank's 1, 2, and 3, as well as the exhibits that back up those matters, the court issues findings of fact and conclusions of law as to how and why the court ruled in whatever manner it rules on the defense's request. Wherefore, and a wherefore clause is in every motion that you'll ever find, and it's what you're asking the court to do. Wherefore, defense counsel by counsel respectfully requests that this court set a Frank's hearing, and also for it to issue findings of fact and conclusions of law as to the reasoning for its ruling. So a lot of snark there in the last wherefore in the last paragraph. And that's it. You got your verification. So there it is, buddy. Frank's 3, the continuing saga of the Frank's memorandum. It's never ending. So, like, you know, I mean, how do you take it? You know, so somebody who's not like, I'm dying to know, you know, so somebody who's not knee deep into this case, you know, like what are your, what are your initial responses to it, man?
Well, like I said, like first of all, that the amount of evidence that they're either hiding or destroying is insane, and the fact that they knew they were going to be deposed and they just didn't give a shit because apparently they've just, I don't know. I saw in the chat some folks are like, it's just they just feel like they've done this shit before and there's just no accountability. Like it's just wild to me that they would do this, and I just, like I said, you know, what's upsetting to me, and you know, I know I'm pretty quiet, but like apparently Gull, from what from everything, you know, I've seen your lives and from what we've talked about, she's just going to deny this and not go to have a hearing about. Like she's just going to go. Like, how could you deny this? But she already denied the first and the second one, so now we got a third one, which is reiterating what came in the previous ones, and she's just going to deny it with no hearing, and then just going to go forward. And like I said, to me, I just can't imagine how bad they're going to look when all this shit, if this just goes to a trial, which it looks like it's going to, because she's not going to grant, right? She's not going to be like, they shouldn't have given that arrest affidavit. They're not going to do that, right? They're not going to have a hearing. So how bad is this trial going to look? This prosecution and these you know, the police or whoever's involved are going to look atrocious. I mean, the defense is going to roast them. I can't imagine how there's no there's no reasonable doubt. How this reeks of reasonable doubt. Everything that has been read so far just reeks of that there's other people out there that probably did this, that the police were trying to hide that fact. I mean, this is the case where, you know, the defense usually always says, from all, you know, I'm new to true crime, but from every case I watched, the defense closing is they picked out a guy, they stuck on that guy, and they didn't want to. And a lot of the other cases, it's like, no, but this case is like the definition of they picked out a guy, they stuck on that guy, and they weren't going to let anyone look into anything else. And this is proof that that's exactly what they did. I mean, that's always the argument, but man, it seems like in this case, that's exactly what they did. And I don't know. That's
right. This one seems like it has actual legs, you know, right. But like to go exactly to what your point is that because of that, what you just said in terms of defense lawyers always do this shit, it's got that the boy who cried wolf thing going with it. You know what I mean? Like we're people that are not really digging in all the way, that are kind of on the periphery, that hear about it here and there. You know, they hear about Vikings running around killing people. They're like, what a bunch of fucking bullshit, you know? But it's like when you kind of dig into it, and if you look at it objectively, it's got to cause you concern, right? I mean, like there's enough here that substantiated by actual evidence that, again, was produced by the state, which was given to them by law enforcement. If it doesn't give you pause, like if you're the victims' families, man, like, and I say it all the time, and it's like, you know, because victims' families, you know, often are left in the dark by the prosecutors and law enforcement, many times out of necessity. You know, they cannot let things get out in fear of that somebody from the family may say something to somebody and it gets out. You know what I mean? They do it in order to protect the integrity of the investigation. And I get that, but it doesn't make it any easier on the families. And then when an arrest happens, you know, that at that point, the prosecutor steps in, you know, and then the families are dealing with the prosecutor, and the prosecutors are saying, look, we got the right guy. We did this. We're getting you justice finally. And people unequivocally put their faith in that, all of their faith in it. You know, I mean, you see it all the time, you know, and it's like, and like, what do you expect them to do? You know, so like in a case like this, where after 5 torturous long years, they finally make an arrest, hopefully serving justice of some kind, the only justice that we have in this world. Obviously, there is nothing that will ever come close to bringing those girls back. There is, I mean, it's a loss that's unbearable, you know, but like it's as close as we can get, you know, and then they're sitting here in this world that we live in now, where everything's out there, with me out here reading every document. And I don't just read defense shit. I read everything that's filed, state, defense, both. I'm certainly defense side on this particular case, because I feel that a man's constitutional rights are being violated and shat upon. I think that this judge is running a terrible case. I don't know what she's doing. I think she's running roughshod over a case that is being watched by the world. I mean, at least the world that cares about true crime, you know, and it's under the microscope. It's both of those things. And she seems to not care at all. You know, and we had a Supreme Court saying, run your case better, run your docket better, create a record. And she's just not doing it, even after the Supreme Court said it. You know, so when you're thinking about the families sitting there having to listen to all this shit, you know, and they're like, okay, well, Doug Carter and Tony Liggett and Nick McClellan have been swearing up and down that this is the guy. You know, I want very much to believe that they got the right guy. I mean, doesn't this, like, I'm curious if it creeps into their mind, the doubt, like, do they have, you know, because the bigger issue becomes if Rick Allen goes to trial, and there's 2 ways it can go down from a not guilty verdict. Either the defense is able to prove his actual innocence by essentially solving the crime. Like they come up with, like, they get the geofencing, they send it to their own experts. Like with the defense, you know, the problem with the 70-day date is that it really handcuffed them in terms of them getting their own testing done. And it's got to be done in an extremely quick fashion at this point. You know, you want all the testing done. You want a mirror image of Libby's phone so you can send it out. You need to be trying to dig up who these 3 guys or these 3 people that were walking around the crime scene are. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
what about do you think they've interviewed that Professor Turcos or whatever by now? Like
Turco lives in Chicago. I've been like hounding him without trying to get a stalking.
Because obviously they're going to want that, right? I mean,
yes, of course.
He's got to be at the trial, right? I mean, because how bad is that going to look? They're like, all right, so you told this guy this, and this, and then this is what's in his report. Like, right. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if this goes to trial, and they're gonna be like, oh, so you had these 3 phones, and this is not in your report. Like, how bad is that gonna look in a trial? I mean, I feel like objectively, I don't care who you are, how could that not look like you're hiding shit because you got the wrong guy? I don't know.
Yeah, dude. And look, like when you start getting into the nuts and bolts of trial practice, and you've got this out there, right? You've got that Liggett, who would be somebody that would absolutely have to testify, you would think, for the state. And then you've got Holman, who is also somebody that were both integral in the investigation. They were part of the unified command, right? The little group that was in head of the investigation. At trial, you're now presented, if you're Nick McClellan, with the challenge of, can I even put these guys on the stand knowing that they're going to get flame thrown? If he doesn't put them on the stand, then I don't know how he's getting, like, I don't know how the defense gets this in. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the chess part of trials.
Right, but if he doesn't,
thing that I love covering in trials, like the chess moves that are being made, you know, but it's like, you have to think like this may put them in a position, they being the state, that they cannot put either of these 2 guys on the stand, because they will have 0 credibility once this comes out, because Baldwin and Rosie are going to be able to impeach the shit out of them.
Right. So how do they backdoor information that those 2 have that's critical to the investigation? Like, they have to get another witness in there that somehow gets the evidence in that they need, or is there evidence that those two don't have to present, that they can get in some other way? Because that's the question. Because
well, so there's a doctrine in the law called like with respect to law enforcement, called like the collective knowledge doctrine, that like you can have one cop, like if they're with the same agency or they were in unified command, theoretically you get on the stand and testify to what other cops may have known. So it's a doctrine in the law. I mean, obviously it's not optimal, because like if I'm defense counsel, I'm saying, hey, why isn't Holman up here?
yeah,
Why are you testifying to shit that Holman can testify to? Where's he at? So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. All right. Sarah was telling me to let's go through we got some questions. Let's go through some questions, Jay.
Well, I know you like to go through the all right, so we got Sarah's right here. And while you do this, I just gotta go to the little Bo's room. I'll be right back.
Okay. For clarification, is a bridge guy photo from the down the hill video or a separate actual photo or video? Do we know? Thanks, Bob. Well, thank you, first of all, Sarah, for everything, for your modding, for your awesomeness as a human being, and for your generosity. We don't really know, to be honest with you. I mean, it is certainly being implied that there is a 40+ second video that existed on Libby's phone that was a snap video. Now, I'm old and out of touch, so I had to ask my 17-year-old about, because like I always understood snap was that you would take a video, and like why the kids liked it is it would disappear. You could set a time where it would implode, for the end user and off your phone. But I also so I asked Cameron, I'm like, look, is there a way that, she's like, yeah, there's a setting that you can keep and store in your photos any videos that you take through Snap. So we don't know. It's certainly, I've always asked a question, and not just with the picture of the still, which you can tell has obviously been blown up. Like if anybody's looking at that photograph and thinking that that person was that close to the girls, is just out of their minds. I mean, you can see it's so pixelated. You can't even see, like, nothing's clear in the photograph. So it was clear he was a distance behind, 30, 40, 50 feet, something like that. And that, for the purposes of trying to make him more visible, if they could, they blew it up. Obviously, from the great distance, like in the original video, you're not going to be able to make him out, obviously, because if there was any chance that you could have made him out from the way that it was in its original form, they wouldn't have altered it and given us a zoomed in. I don't even know, and I'm not so convinced. It's always been just assumed that the sound comes from that video. I don't know that. Like I don't know that until I see and hear that person saying those words. Like I have no idea if those are from they're just, they put it out in a way that they make it seem like that sound came from the video. I don't know that for a fact. I just don't. And there's a lot of questions about that video. And frankly, that's what I was talking about. The defense needs to be getting a mirrored copy of everything from Libby's phone so that they can send it to their own forensic expert to have them look at it. Because in a case like this, with the kind of stuff that appears to be going on from the law enforcement side of it, if I'm the lawyers, I'm not trusting anything. I'm having my own experts look at everything. But again, we've got this time issue now where we're now 59 days away from trial. And that shit, I keep trying to tell people, is a practicing attorney of a long time. 60 days preparing for a trial like this, it's gone. Sorry if I blew your eardrums out. It's like, it's the blink of an eye. Like there is not enough hours in the day. There's just no, like you're at trial essentially right now. It's like panic is setting in. So hopefully that answered your question. And it's like the answer is we don't know. We don't really know yet. We will not know until trial. Throw up hater guy, Jay. Right below Sarah. Any questions you see in there? Hater guy passing through Delphi now. Creepy as hell since actual killer is still loose. Keep preaching those facts. Thanks, hater guy. Appreciate that $5 holla too. We'll go through and throw up all the love from all of our people too. Meg P, can you throw hers? Oh, thanks, Jay. Sorry, buddy.
Gotcha.
Is there a law where a higher authority like the Supreme Court step in? If not, why isn't there? Thanks, Bob and Jay. So, Meg, in this case, it's gone up to the Indiana Supreme Court, but that was for the issue of them removing Richard Allen's attorneys. Like, she kicked him off the case. Like, she framed it in a way like they withdrew, but she really kicked him off the case. They fought it. They had to file what's called a writ of mandamus, and that went up to the Indiana Supreme Court. They argued it, and the court said, "No, you went too far. You can't remove his choice of counsel. We're reinstating him." So they were put on the case against her will. There are things called interlocutory appeals, but those are typically on rulings that are made. Like, if you're asking me if there's a higher authority so we can get away from Judge Gall to hear the case, the answer is no. Unfortunately, the reality is that happens after conviction when you appeal, and if you get a new trial, you just have to hope against all hope that, you are not going to get the same judge. Now, anybody, again, who's not following this case, I just want you to have an understanding that two things took place early. The original judge, and there's not many judges over in Carroll County. As I said, it's a very small county. The first judge, Judge Diener, recused himself shortly after the arrest, like after signing the warrants. And he had made a comment. He's like, the bloodlust in this case is too much for me to handle. And he knew going in from everything that preceded it for the 5 years during the case when it was being investigated and seemingly went cold. And so what they did is they appointed what's called a special judge, and that was from a different county. So she is not a judge in the county that the crimes took place. She is a judge that was appointed from Allen County, which is up in northern Indiana near Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it's a much bigger jurisdiction. She's got a much bigger courthouse. So, the other thing that happened is the defense had filed a motion for change of venue, and she granted it in a form. Technically it's a change of veneer, meaning that the jury pool is going to be brought in from Allen County, her home county. So they're going to go up there, I'm assuming, pick the jury, then they'll bring them down here. They'll stick them in a hotel for the duration of the trial, because they're obviously concerned because of the size of Carroll County, small. It's obviously this case has been on everybody's mind there. There's no one that doesn't know about this case there, except for toddlers. Anybody that would be jury age knows about the case. So it'd be very difficult to impanel a fair and unbiased jury. So those two things have occurred. But yeah, as far as there's writs of, you can file a writ of habeas corpus, but like not for this. Like, there's no getting out from under Gall. Like, that's like the only chat. Because like when it went up to the Supreme Court in Indiana, that was one of the things that they were asking, that she be removed from the case, and the Indiana Supreme Court refused to do it. So as of now, she's there. MAAB, $7 holla. Appreciate you. Is there a reason the FBI would still have the young bridge guy sketch on their website? That became the guy. Like in Jay, and I didn't even talk about the sketches. So the first original sketch, and you could probably find them, they're easy to pull up. Look to be excuse me. Man, I'm fighting it, dude. Been doing a lot.
You've been on for how long, man? Hardest working man in showbiz.
Man, followed very closely behind by you. So like originally the first composite sketch that came out appeared to be like a middle-aged slightly overweight, pudgy guy, round face, stubble, had kind of like the Irish cap, very different looking. And then at some point later, they then release a second composite, and they say that that's Bridge Guy. Okay. Based on these witness statements that we were hearing about with Sarah Carbaugh and Betsy Blair. So that, and you know how composites work. You have multiple people coming and telling a sketch artist, okay, this is what I remember. And they do the best that they can to try to recreate what that person may have looked like. So months and months later, it might have even been years later, I can't even remember at this point, this second sketch comes out with this young looking, fresh faced, young looking kid. And they're saying, well, this is Bridge Guy. And then with no explanation at all as to like how that happened. So I was watching something the other night, and I think that Doug Carter was on it. And what they did is they combined both of the sketches. And they're like, okay, well, we think like if somebody knows what I'm talking about in the chat, if you could put the link in there, that'd be great. But they put this thing together and they're like, we think that this is what the guy looks like, So I don't know, but like as far as I know right now, oh, there you go. There you go. See what I'm saying? Like they don't look like similar dudes, right?
No.
So I saw something where they blended those two pictures together and then they put it next to Rick Allen. My thing with Rick Allen is that typically in cases like this, where you have a monster that's done something that clearly doesn't appear to have a motive, an outward motive. Like in most cases, we have motives. Like we know with the Adelsons, they wanted to get down to where Grandma Gotti was, and they had tried through the court system, and the court wouldn't allow them to remove the kids down there. So, they killed Dan. And, so there's your motive, right? And then you have like serial killer cases where there is no apparent motive, that people just kill to kill. And, that very much appeared to be the case here. And when you have, at least on its face, you have to wonder if there was a motive. And, but when you have a situation like that, where there is no motive, man, it makes it really difficult for law enforcement, because it's easier when you have a motive, because you can make your concentric circles working backwards from like kind of where that motive is because it gives you a starting point. In a case like this, there's no starting point as to like who would have done this and why. And so like in those types of cases, like with Kohberger, there doesn't appear to be a motive, and like law enforcement came out and said, I think they initially said it was a targeted attack. And like, where are you getting that shit from? Like, where are you pulling that? Like, and who was the target? And then they tried to walk it back a bit, and I can see why law enforcement on a college campus would want to say that it was a target attack. So you don't have panic in the streets that there's some maniac running around slaughtering college students, but when he gets arrested, people start coming out of the woodwork about what a creep he is and the creepy shit that he's done. Like that's kind of like par for the course. It's like with Huerman, when he gets arrested, people come out of the woodwork talking about what a creep he is, and just talking about bizarre circumstances or encounters they had with them. That's what happens. And then in this case, there's nothing. There was like some woman that worked with him at Walmart that said he farted and didn't say excuse me or something, like some bullshit. Like there's like nothing that would point to. And what we should do is we should do a live with one of our former FBI friends, to come in. That's a profiler. It'd be interesting. We
could get Julia Cowley, man.
We'll get Julia on and see what she thinks. And I've heard like Julia has been on the prosecutors podcast, and they're very much on the you know, I don't know where they're at, but I think that they got the right guy. And I think that, you know, so when she's with them, I think she's like, yeah, he's the right guy. I'd love to be able to probe her. You know what I'm saying? It would be interesting.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's great. So
You know,
that's
Bob,
something we could do.
I was thinking of something that I don't know if you probably brought this up in your lives before, but I'm curious. You know, we talked about a lot about how, like, when we kind of did the same thing with when you talk about Heuermann and you're talking about the bail application, and we went through that thing, and that thing was like amazing, right? It was it was like just insane compared, and that's, you know, Ray Turney, and that's like his office, and he does a good job. So
Right.
I could just imagine him being an awesome attorney presenting his case. And
Right.
I'm just curious. I don't know this prosecutor from, you know, but I just imagine if this is how he presented his case, and this is how he's kind of doing this shifty stuff, that in trial, when he presents his case, he's going to be like that too. I don't know. I don't know him, but I'm curious if, like, this is how he does his pleadings and his hearings, and it's all kind of got this like shadiness behind it. Like, I wonder if that'll come through when he presents his case. I mean, obviously, with some of this evidence is going to come through that some of the shit was real shady, but just as him presenting himself to the jury and the jury looking at him, I just wonder if he's going to present the case like, wow, this guy's fucking shady. Like, I wonder if that'll be like something that, like, when we won't know, obviously.
I think it helps McClelland in the sense that the jury's coming from Allen County, which is, you know, 100+ miles away from Delphi, right? So like that helps, you know, because I had said on my live last night, I'm like, I put a challenge out to some of my viewers and subs. I'm like, if you live in Allen County, why don't you walk around tomorrow when you're out on the street, if it's a nice day, and just ask a variety of people from all age groups, you know, men, women, whatever the case may be, and see if they've heard of the case, you know. And I hazard to guess that a majority of people have not. You know, it's like people, like, when you're in the true crime world, you just assume that everybody's heard of the case because it's like all encompassing for us. You know, like if I were to ask my mother and father-in-law, who actually, you know, snowbird down in Florida, if they've heard of the Adelson case, they'll be like, no, what is it? You know what I mean? It's like, but we assume that everyone knows, and it's just not the case.
I mean,
we're a small, weird community of people that love true crime.
Before the Murdoch case, half these cases I would know nothing about. I mean, that being said, obviously they're not in my region, so I don't know if, like, but I wasn't a person who turned on true crime documentaries. I was a person who was turning on the Mets, so, or
Right.
You know, like, so, like, I would, a lot of these, like, even the Long Island serial case before, like, Shannon knew all about it. Like, I knew very little. I knew of it, but I knew very little about it. So, like, I was one of those people. Like, there are people who, like you said, we think we're in this like, you know, group, and you don't realize it's not
like, we're like a weird tribe. Like, there's a lot more that are not like us, that don't pay any attention to true crime, than there are that are like us. You know what I'm saying? And like, and to your point, like, if you look, when I look at the demographics and the metrics of who listens to my podcast, which, if you don't, scan that QR code, that'll bring you should definitely listen to our podcast. It's great, if I don't say so myself.
I wanted to actually, before I just wanted to, I saw this in my chat, and I thought you would like this comment. This was before we even started. Mia Beto, I'm listening to Bob Alley podcast episode 606 to get sped up. This case is cray. So got some new listeners.
So it's so crazy. And like, the coverage that you're hearing on the Delphi stuff is all from lives. So that is not what our typical pods sound like. Like my Gacy season and my Garcia season, which I'm desperately trying to finish. And I'm way overdue. I should have just made it like 6 different seasons so people weren't down my throat, because it's so many episodes. I'm like 51 episodes in. I'm like, people don't understand. Like, most pods do 8, 10, 12 episodes and they're done. Like, mine are much longer, and it takes me time. I have to write, research, I have to do all of it. And obviously I'm knee deep into the Delphi thing, and I'm not going to not do it. You know, it's like, I have to do it. I'm like too far in to step away from it. You know, but it's like, yeah, dude, like, if you look at those demos, it's like a 80-20 women to men. Like, women love true crime. men tolerate true crime, and you get a few that love it, but for the most part, women just love true crime. It's probably because they're always envisioning murdering their shithead husbands, you know, like in their dreams. Like, oh my God. You know, it's like, oh, I'm going to live vicariously through this woman who just beat the shit and murdered her piece of shit husband. You know, these men are awful. But yeah,
speaking of, by the way, we have no verdict, no questions yet on James Crumbly. No verdict, no questions. That's
do you know
surprising,
what's the verdict clock at? Do you know? You have a rough estimate? What did they go?
I
A
think
couple
it's
hours
like
yesterday?
I think maybe an hour. It didn't seem very long times. I think it's like 6 or 7 hours at this point. But it was 11 for Jennifer, so I guess.
All right. Throw up some of these. Throw up some of this. Like I know you were doing it in there, but let's give some shout outs.
Yeah, Shiraz gave 10.
Love you, Shiraz. Family hug. Appreciate you 10 times.
I think I brought this one up, but Rochelle D said, "We need you, Bob and Jay. Thanks for all you do." Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you, Rochelle. We appreciate your support so much.
And then Jen gifted 20.
Man. 20. Always give her Jen with 20 big ones, Jay Bird. Man, thank you so much for that incredible generosity. And I'm sure that everyone that got those wonderful memberships, and like I love those memberships because it really does, it builds a fam. Like, and Jay and I are trying to build a community here, and we built a community that we think is like, and if you're new to Jay's chat, you're like, I cannot recommend more going over to my boys chat, checking out. And we got a lot of bleed over, obviously, with both of our chats. We have a ton of like we basically have the same mods.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, if you haven't gone over to Jay's channel, please do go sub. He's knee deep into Adelson. I know there's a bit of a respite, but he's been doing a series of amazing videos.
Nice.
Jay is hot after getting Wendy arrested, which he's confident it's going to happen. I'm hoping for his sake it does. I mean, there's no question that I think that she was.
It's just what do they have? Do they have enough?
It's going to be what, you know, and Jay's done a very amazing job at putting, and it's all just facts shit. Like Jay's not coming out with a bunch of bullshit.
I'm just taking it from the trials.
He's literally stripping it from the trials, showing you the testimony, showing you the inconsistent statements, showing you things that Wendy said that just don't make any goddamn sense, you know, and he's proven his case, and they're amazing. So definitely go check all of his stuff out. All of his content's great. And you know, and he does amazing interviews with amazing people all the time. And you thank me for it later. Trust me.
Thank you, dude. And obviously vice versa if you're on my channel. You are, but again, like I think we have a lot of bleed over.
We got a lot of crossover. No
Lily
question.
B, 5 defense diary pod. Thank you, Lily.
Lily B, kisses. Family hug. Love it.
And then Joanne, another always giver. Thank you so much, Joanne. She's always giving.
You're amazing. We love you, Joanne.
We
love you so much.
I don't think
all right, this potentially criminal. I wonder if Sergeant Holman likes to play hide, Odin, spear out in the woods with Westfall and Holderman. Yeah, probably, maybe. You never know. Look at that, dude.
Jennifer giving you
$10 holla.
And that was for you. And earlier in the stream, she gave one to me. So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Jennifer. Thank you. That's so generous.
Dom's mom gifted a
family hug. Dom's mom's an always giver. Always. She gives till it hurts. We appreciate you more than you know.
Rupert here.
Both. She took care of us.
Yeah, she's awesome. She is an always. Rupert for you, Bob. Big fan. First time I can watch live from the UK.
I love it. That makes me so happy because I was like, I usually go at night, so I'm happy for our friends across the pond that are getting to watch alive because we're not going while they're long asleep, you know. So thank you so much for that support, and we're thrilled that you're here. You know, it's like Dizzy, our girl Dizzy, whose birthday, happy day after your birthday day. You know, she's like, I don't know when the woman sleeps. Like seriously,
I don't think she does. I don't think she does.
Like honestly, I was trying to. I'm like, okay. I'm like, she's like, the first text I see when I open my eyes at 8 whatever this morning is like all caps, screaming J style, wake up, Bob. There's a filing. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, LOL. I was like, yeah, I know. I mean, she's amazing, man. But yeah, no, it's cool to be able to do this during the day, which obviously when we're streaming trials, we know that we can get our friends from across the pond where it's a reasonable hour for them. But you know, when we go late, when we're in the evenings, man, it's like it's late for them, 2, 3 in the morning. Like when I'm doing my lives with Bill Dorsch on the Gacy thing that we're doing, you know, he's like he sets his alarm and he wakes up at 3 in the morning. The first 3 or 4 he came in, he's in his robe. I'm like, dude, I ain't sweating you. Come in your robe, Bill. Come in your robe. Like you do you. Like who gives a shit? You know, so it's like, so yeah, no, that's great. I love being able to do that. All right, did we get through all that good stuff?
We just gotta go. Francis just gave you on DD, the first fucking legit true crime guy. Stay up. So you got Francis for all.
Francis, thank you for that generosity and thank you for that comment. I appreciate that. I really do.
Deja just gifted a membership, one of our mods. Thank you so much, Deja. You're awesome.
You are amazing. Deja's always give her, always give her, always give her. All right. Mods, you guys see anything that wasn't starred? Any comments? Because I know Jay was able to scan. When I'm reading, I don't look at shit. So I didn't see anything you know, at all. So if any of you guys saw anything that's of interest, wait, Sleuthy, what are you talking about? Sleuthy said yes, just like an hour ago, he requested medical records and mental health records. Who? Are you saying that McClelland is once again to ask for, he's now changed his mind and now he's re-asking for the 4th time for Rick Allen's medical records and mental health records? Sleuthy, are you talking about that case? Or are you talking about Delphi? Oh, wait, Dizzy's putting it in here. And a 3rd and 4th request. Oh, Diz, are they talking about Allen? So, Jay, I don't know if you know, he had Allen, so typically, like if the defense, just so people have an understanding, if the defense is putting forward like an insanity defense or some kind of mental defect defense because of HIPAA, you know, in federal law, our medical records are private. You know, but in a case like that, if you're going to make it an issue at trial, then the state has the right to be able to get your mental record. So in this case, there's been none of that. Now, last week sometime, McClelland wrote up his 3rd request. He had been denied twice getting the medical records. And in his motion to get those turned over, he put in there that he had accessed an ex parte motion by the defense. And ex parte means that the other side cannot see it. Okay. Like you're not allowed, like both sides can file them. And the reason that you do that is like many times, you know, in this case in particular, they were asking for money from the county because Allen's indigent to get experts. Like they were trying to get a forensic psychologist. And they wanted to get somebody that was an expert on false confessions. And so they filed it ex parte where only the judge is supposed to see it. And so not only did he see it, he then quoted it in his motion and then put like the woman that they were considering hiring on blast in the motion, like the woman, the expert who hasn't even been hired yet. So, and this is one of those cases, you know, where you throw a name out there, everyone's digging into this woman. God knows what's happening with her on her phone. I mean, who knows? So a couple days after that, you know, after the entire world, like I did a live on it, you know, raging against a couple of days later, he's like, you know what? I'm going to withdraw. I'm withdrawing my 3rd request because I read that ex parte thing. Even though they filed it wrong, which they didn't, you know, it shouldn't have been on the die. Like it comes to be learned that like, we don't know how he got it because the defense was able to verify that it was filed under seal and that it was filed properly. So like the question becomes, where did he get it? You know, because there's only a limited amount of places where the state can get their hands on it. So it's interesting, dude. It's just like that.
Again, I mean, again, that's like the point I was trying to make before. Like, that's something an idiot does. Like, how could you? First of all, getting it you shouldn't do is wrong. But then, not only do you fuck up so bad, you put it in a public filing. So whoever gave it to you, probably, you know, whoever it was, is probably like, this fucking moron. I gave him his fucking thing so he could have a little heads up, and then he puts it on blast. Like, that's dumb. No, like, is that not an idiotic thing to do?
Yeah, dude, it's like, it goes back to that question you were talking about, like, you know, whether or not this guy and his seeming buffoonery, like during the pendency of the trial, whether that's gonna, you know, like have an impact on a jury, you know. But the reality is he's never tried a murder case, which that's not the end of the world. He's tried cases. I mean, trials are trials. Either you know how to conduct a trial, doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, Garcia was our first murder case, and it was a big one, you know, but like we had tried tons and tons of cases, you know, so I wasn't worried. And I brought my dad in as backup, you know. I'm like, all right, I'm going to bring a guy who's dealt with, and that was really more for the high profile nature of the case, and like kind of how to deal with the media and how to try to counteract the media, which is always something that as defense attorneys, we have to try to do because of that fact that I was talking about earlier. When you have the state's theory of the case out there as the only theory available, you know, obviously the media is focusing on that, and that becomes the narrative. And you have to try as defense attorneys to unpoison the well of potential jurors who have all come to the conclusion that the guy's guilty because it's the only story they've heard, you know. So like, you know, battling the media from the defense side of it is a real thing. Like this case, more than any, I've really never seen defense team come out like this and lay out their entire theory of the case, you know, which really did, in my estimation, level the playing field, you know, because for every person that thinks the Odinist shit is ridiculous, there is somebody who thinks that it's not. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean,
so, you know, but like when it comes to McClellan, like I say it all the time, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe the guy's a good lawyer. I mean, he certainly never dealt with like all the shit that's going on right now, like procedurally. Like not many lawyers have. Galen, $20 holla. We love you back. We love you back.
Thank you so much, Galen.
We appreciate you.
You know, one thing I was thinking of when we were doing this, when we were talking about like the Nordic Odinism. No, I don't know why I'm saying Nordic Odinism.
That's
and people
right.
are like
Nordic,
you know, yeah, Nordic. But they're like, oh, I can't believe this can't be real. You know, that there's some sort of right-wing conservative racist group that does shit. And then I see every other day, you see these people in their mess walking on capitals. Like, it's not that surprising to me that there's these groups that do stuff in secret because they're not even doing it in secret anymore. They're coming out with tiki torches. Like these groups that are like out there. Like, it's not that surprising to me that there's these groups that are doing this shit. And I mean, just look at when we went through fucking Holder's Facebook. It was all out there. Like, I don't know why that's so. You know, like you said, I guess people like they just can't believe that could be true, but it's not shocking. And now Galen gave me one too. Thank you so much, Galen. That was so kind of you to do that.
Galen, you're amazing. You're such an amazing human. It's like the generosity of people, Jay. Like just every day blows me away.
It's really.
It's like we're just a couple of idiots on YouTube talking. Like, you know,
I say all the time, just a moron. Just a moron yelling at a screen.
It's like it's amazing. We are. I never want any of our subs or any of our people that engage with us and those that are so kind and generous to ever think that we take that ever for granted, because we don't. Like, we really, it's huge for us. I mean, Jay left his profession to do this. I left my profession to do this, you know, so we both took huge risks because there's no guarantees in this shit. Jay and I went into this having zero idea of whether people would want to hear a goddamn word we said. You know what I mean? So it's like,
absolutely.
You know, it's like, you know, our friends like us, but that's all we like. Our wives like us, but that's all we got. You know, that's all we got to go on. Like, that does not mean the world is going to like us. And certainly there's people, you know, especially like from my side of it, where I'm taking a position on a case like this, I get a ton of hate out there. You know what I mean? I got people putting my names and shit that they're sending to the court in this case. There are other creators. And I'm like, you know, it's, you know, and I know that people give you static because you use bad words. Don't use bad words, Jay. You swear too much.
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, I mean, we may not be everybody's cup of tea, but we hope that we're a majority of people's cup of tea. You know, I think, and the one thing that I could say about both of us is that we are two very genuine dudes. You know, like you get what, you know, you see what you get with us. You know, we're both criers.
Yes.
We both love to rant. You know, if something pisses us off, you're going to hear about it in the proper fashion. Oh, thanks, Gambies. All right. So I'm looking at it, Sleuthy. So, and I'm sure Diz sent me these things too. So, Sleuthy, is there anything new in here, like in terms of language, that it's worth me sending to Jay? That, like, I don't want to read the same shit, is what I'm saying, because I've done a live on this. So, is there new shit that he's thrown in here? So, like, this is like how McClelland is combating this stuff by the defense. So I'm anticipating there's going to be some new stuff in here. Like, now he's probably going to give some details about the confessions, maybe, you know, so I'm anxious. So Sleuthy, let me know.
By the way, while Bob waits for that, just to let you know, there's still no verdict. And I bet what happens is me and Bob end the stream, and then 5 minutes later, the verdict. But there is no verdict yet in James Crumbly, folks, if you're wondering.
Of course. So, all right, let me look through this real quick. So he refiled the third. Oh, that's just for straight up medical records. Okay. Oh, Jesus. They're both 17 pages long. Okay, but this one has a subpoena ducis tecum attached. You remember those from back in the day, Jay, right? The old subpoena ducis tecum.
I days. Do.
All right, let's see. Okay, all right. So, Sleuth, do you think all right, so this is, what page is that, Sleuthy? Is that all you think I need to read? All right, Jay, I'm going to send you this fourth one here.
Okay.
We'll just read the pertinent part, and I'll explain what it is. It'll be interesting.
By the way, as Bob sends me this, we should probably both apologize to our wives who are on this group chat. It's me, Bob, Shannon, and Allie, and me and Bob are just texting back and forth. Meanwhile, you know, Shannon's doing her job. Allie's writing an appeal for months, and then
relief that shit. It's a family affair. It's a family affair. All right, let me see. All right, let me copy this. Let me know if this works, dude. Oh, shit. I just sent it back to Nicole. I mean, Sleuthy. Oops.
She could DM it to me if she wants. I'm on. I saw she DM me some other stuff, but that's.
Let's see. And Dizzy has it in the Discord. She put it in my Discord. I'm sure it's in Diz's Discord too.
Right, let me go to Diz's Discord. Oh, you texted it to me? All right, let me see.
Yeah, see if you can open that.
All right, let's see if I can. Stop screen. Percent share screen.
Sorry, y'all.
Right. Where am I going?
Cool. All right, Sleuthy, like, how far down was it? I can't say. I can't tell what page that is.
Robin, no, I was not a lawyer. I was a litigation examiner. I was the guy at the insurance company, if you got into a car accident, who was handling your injury.
Okay. All right, let's see. All right, I'm waiting for Nicole to get to me. All right, she said pages 8 and 9, Jay.
6 Sauer? His gun was a 6 Sauer? No shit. Just like
Yep. Isn't that funny? I was thinking that exactly. Like, you know who else was a Sig Sauer? No, I take it back. It was a Smith & Wesson SD. Like, I thought, was that what that was? A Smith & Wesson Sig Sauer or Sig Sauer? I just saw a case where it was a Smith & Wesson 9mm, like with the exact same model that was in Garcia's case.
Is there something specifically I'm looking for on these pages, or just this is page
Okay,
8?
so no, like I'm gonna read it. So just go to pages 8 and 9, and I'll read it. Because I can read better on my phone. Let's see, maybe I'm blind as hell. Okay, let me see. All right, so I'm gonna start with God damn it.
So he says go up a tiny bit to the bottom of 7 for context.
Okay, so she said go up on page. Okay, I see what she's saying. All right. Okay, so based on the probable cause for the charges, the defendant has been held in the Carroll County Jail, transferred to White County Jail, and then ultimately transferred to Westville Correctional Facility, and is currently housed in the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. He has been held in the Department of Correction. And just for background, again, this is the state attempting to get his medical and mental health records. Okay. Like I was just explaining, unless there's typically a mental health defense or a mental defect defense, they don't have a right to get him. Okay. And he has been held in the Department of Corrections since November 3rd, 2022. During the defendant's time in incarceration, the defense has filed several motions that have called into question Richard Allen's mental health and his physical well-being because of the alleged conditions at Westville Correctional Facility and Wabash Correctional Facility. Now the defense has notified the state that they may introduce his mental health and or medical records from his stay in the Department of Corrections into evidence at the trial for this cause of action. The state has filed a motion for leave in the past to obtain these records, and the defense has objected to said motions. Now, the defense has listed the defendant's mental health and or medical records as possible exhibits in this trial. The state believes that they are entitled to same. It seems clear the defense intends to make the defendant's mental health and medical health an issue in this matter. In order to address this, the state needs to review the defendant's mental health and medical records in order to have an opportunity to consult its own expert. The state concedes that the defense has not filed any kind of insanity defense or any other defense on behalf of Richard Allen, but the defense has brought Richard Allen's mental health and medical health into question in their filings and has listed those documents as possible exhibits to the trial. So he did what Andy does. He's repeated himself there. For these reasons, the state is requesting the mental health records for Richard Allen from Westville Correctional Facility and Wabash Valley Correctional Facility since his stay beginning in November of 2022 to present as specified in the attached subpoena Deuces Taken. Okay. In this, I'm hoping this is where it gets juicy. This request is made for the purpose of preparing for trial in this matter. The state believes that Richard Allen's mental health and physical health is going to be argued at trial. The state believes that the mental records and the medical records of Richard Allen are relevant and would assist the state in preparing for trial. The state is not asking for an entire mental health history or medical history of Richard Allen, but only for those records for his stay at the Westville Correctional Facility and Wabash Valley Correctional Facility from November 3rd of 2022 until present to be able to respond to allegations made by the defense and to prepare for trial. All right. The state of Indiana is aware from prior filings the defense objects to the subpoena, blah, 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 blah. Wherefore the state of Indiana. All right, let me see. So that was kind of like more of the same. Let me see if there was right after the bold italic writing. It never gets juicy. Oh, well, but can he use the exhibits that were submitted? I mean, theoretically, yeah. So Sleuthy was asking, like, he's asking for them. I don't know if they've tendered the exhibits over yet. So basically what you do when you're preparing for trial is you put together a witness list and you put together an exhibit list. I typically have never had to turn over, like, and it's different from discovery. Like reciprocal discovery, you have to exchange prior to, whenever the end date for discovery is. So when in a case like this, where he's trying to get the medical records, and if they're going to use them in exhibits, Sleuthy, I think that they probably just listed them, that they're going to be using them as exhibits. I don't think that they've been tendered, because remember, a judge never, like in any case, no judge has a copy of the discovery back in chambers. That's not their role in a trial, unless they're the trier of fact, meaning it's a bench trial as opposed to a jury trial. The judge has no business looking at, because you want the judge to be unbiased. You don't want the judge reading through the discovery and saying, "Oh, this guy's guilty as shit." Like, this fucking guy. Why is he even going to trial? You don't want that happening. So, what they do is that they are the gatekeeper of what gets in evidence, what stays out of evidence. They're the gatekeeper of what testimony may come in and what has to go out, or, if there's objections, they're the gatekeeper of all the evidence that comes into trial. Clee, my boy Clee Oliver, I will see you Monday, my brother. It's been a minute. You weren't at the last thing, were you, Clee? I didn't see you there. Like, I think there was a thing that I went to, and I'm like, where's Clee? Clee? I was walking around. Clee's a great guy. I'm excited, man. I'm excited about, it's going to be a real shit show. Hennessy's going to be in there cracking skulls with his lead pipe. It's like, so they brought this just a war horse, like 40-year, like Indianapolis, really criminal defense attorney. The guy's won 100 murder trials. Just want you to try to wrap your mind around that. Like, in all different forms and fashions. That doesn't mean that everything goes to jury, but winning 100 murder cases is a lot. And the guy is like everything that's been going on with like all the YouTubers and like all the people that have been named recently that are going to be called as witnesses in the case. It's going to be a thing, man. It's going to and none of it matters. None of it. It's all collateral. It's ancillary shit. It has no bearing on the case. Like last night, I was like, why is Nick McClelland using what little valuable time he has left messing with this thing that can clearly wait until after the trial? Why? Like if I'm the citizens of Carroll County, I'm asking my prosecutor, why are you wasting your time on this instead of preparing for the trial? Because it's a legitimate question. Like anybody on that side of the fence, like that has already absolutely decided that he's guilty, despite the fact that we haven't seen the evidence, but they're just convinced of it anyway, and there's no convincing them otherwise. Ask yourself, why isn't your prosecutor preparing for trial instead of preparing for this stupid shit that's happening on the 18th? And on top of that, like the hearing for the motion to dismiss is being heard by the defense. So the defense has filed a motion to dismiss the case, which is being heard in the afternoon. So it's interesting. So yeah, I have a feeling at this point, like Judge Gull might grant that motion for his medical records. I mean, they're going to come out. They're going to come out. The thing is that when you're in a prison and you're seeing, it's funny. Sarah said, Aspiring said, be careful, Bob, be careful. They'll put you on the witness list to keep you at the courthouse. I thought that exact thing. I would love nothing more to be called to the stand in this case. The judge would not be a fan of what I had to say. And it would be very civil, but it would be a very, very truthful evaluation of her performance in this case. And that's the truth. I'm very careful. Like I don't name call people, it's like, if I'm critical in a way that is using civil language. I use my words, and I just point out what I think are horrific mistakes. I think it's the best way to do it. All right, dude. Let's call it. And then so we'll keep an eye on it.
Rest your voice, Bob. Rest your voice. You've been have some tea, folks. Just keep the notifications on. First of all, thank you all so much for being here. And this was not prepared. We didn't plan this. We were kind of just going to wait for the verdict, but I'm glad you guys are here to watch this with us. And if there's a verdict, we will go live. I don't know. What do you think, Bob? Today, you think we got before 5 o'clock?
I forgot that Jennifer's win 11 hours. And for those of you guys that are not like the Delphi crew that's in here, if you're oblivious to what's going on with James Crumbly in that case, and it revolves around the Oxford school shootings with Ethan Crumbly, where he killed 4 innocent schoolmates of his. It's a big deal. Frankly, there's no more important trial going on. Like Jay, I was on Vinny's show last night on Court TV. Man, I was adamant. Like I was like, I feel very strongly about this verdict. I feel like something has to change in our country, and like these guilty verdicts are going to change everything with how parents of these kids are looked at. You need to start paying attention to your kids. All of us do. Pull your heads out of your phones and pay attention to your kids. It's coming. Like the chickens have come home to roost, man. Like I'm just telling you.
Good.
Like
it's fucking about time, because I'm tired of looking at my phone and waiting for a fucking school shooting that's going to eventually, but nonetheless, you guys absolutely know that me and Bob are going to end the stream and we're going to get a decision in like 10 minutes. So just have your notifications on, follow Seeking Justice to Discord.
Guarantee it.
It's going to happen. Thank you all so much. And if it comes back today, we'll be back. And if not, if it comes back tomorrow, we'll check out that verdict. Yeah, for sure. And CW and Dory, thank you for your membership over at DD. I adore you. Oh, family hugs. All right, brother. Love you so much. Love you. Right, take care, guys. Love you guys. Ciao.